Stalin refuses to surrender. Hitler's generals stare at the map, stunned. One of them whispers, "He's not human." Another says, "This war will never end." But the third, he understands what this means, and what he says changes everything. Because when Berlin finally realizes Stalin won't stop, their response isn't what anyone expected. What they say in that bunker will decide the fate of millions. But first, they have to accept the truth. The Soviet Union isn't breaking. December 1942. The Eastern Front. Snow covers everything. German High Command receives the latest reports. Stalingrad is surrounded. Communications are failing. Supplies are gone. But Hitler refuses to retreat. In Berlin, the generals gather. The war room is cold. Maps cover every wall. Red pins mark Soviet advances. Blue pins mark German defenses. But the red is spreading. Fast. General Paulus sends a message from Stalingrad. His words are clipped. Desperate. "We are encircled. Ammunition low. Morale collapsing." Hitler reads it. He doesn't blink. General Jodl leans forward. He says Stalin is using a new strategy. Total war. No retreats, no negotiations. Just endless waves of men and machines. Hitler scoffs. He calls it Bolshevik madness. But then another report arrives. This one from a captured Soviet officer. His interrogation transcript lands on the table. It's chilling. The officer says Stalin issued a direct order, not one step back. He describes commissars executing retreating soldiers. He says entire divisions were sacrificed to hold a single street. General Guderian reads the transcript twice. He mutters, "This isn't war, it's annihilation." But Hitler smiles. He says, "Then we'll match it." The room goes silent. Nobody agrees. Because they know what matching Stalin means. It means burning everything. It means sacrificing everyone. General Keitel speaks next. He says the Soviets are building factories in the Urals, far from German bombers. He says Stalin is moving entire cities eastward, children, workers, tanks, all disappearing into the snow. Hitler dismisses it. He says Soviet morale will collapse. He says Stalin is bluffing. But then a courier arrives. He carries a Soviet propaganda leaflet dropped over German lines. The leaflet shows a photo of Stalin standing in front of burning Stalingrad. The caption reads, "We will never surrender." He doesn't speak, but his generals do. General Manstein says the Eastern Front is collapsing. He says the Soviets are learning, adapting. He says they're not just defending, they're counterattacking. And they're winning. Hitler slams his fist on the table. He says Germany will never retreat. But the generals know retreat is already happening. In the field, German soldiers are freezing, starving, fighting with bayonets because bullets are gone. One report says a division lost 70% of its men in a single week. Another says Soviet tanks are rolling over trenches, not firing, just crushing. General Model reads these reports. He doesn't speak. He just folds them and puts them away. Because he knows what they mean. Stalin isn't just refusing to surrender. He's turning the war into a meat grinder. And Hitler's refusal to adapt is feeding it. But then something happens. A Soviet defector arrives in Berlin. He's thin, frostbitten, barely alive, but his words shake the room. He says Stalin has a secret plan, not just to defend Russia, but to invade Germany. He says the Red Army is preparing for a push westward. He says Stalin wants Berlin. Hitler laughs. He calls it fantasy. But the generals don't laugh, because they've seen the maps, they've seen the numbers, and they know it's possible. General Zeitzler speaks next. He says the Wehrmacht is stretched too thin. He says the Eastern Front is eating divisions faster than they can be replaced. He says winter is killing more men than bullets. Hitler interrupts. He says Germany will build new weapons. He says the V-2 rocket will change everything. But the generals know better. because rockets don't hold ground. Rockets don't stop tanks. Rockets don't win wars. And Stalin isn't waiting. He's pushing. Every day, every night, without pause, without mercy. General Guderian finally says it out loud. We can't win this war. The room freezes. Hitler stares at him. Then he says, "Then we die trying." But dying isn't strategy, and the generals know it. They start whispering, planning, not to win, but to survive. Some suggest negotiating, others suggest retreating, but none of them say it out loud, because saying it means treason, and treason means death. But then another report arrives, this one from Kursk. The largest tank battle in history. Thousands of machines, tens of thousands of men. The report says the Soviets knew the German plan. They were waiting. They built defenses miles deep. They let the Germans attack, then crushed them. General Hoth reads the report. He says, "They're learning faster than we are." Hitler doesn't respond. He's staring at a map. A red line is moving west. Slowly. Relentlessly. Stalin's refusal to surrender isn't just stubbornness. It's strategy. It's working. And it's terrifying. General Kluge finally asks the question everyone's thinking. What if Stalin never stops? Hitler looks up. He says, "Then we stop him."
But nobody believes it, because stopping Stalin means defeating an enemy who doesn't care about losses, who doesn't care about cities, who doesn't care about anything but victory. And Hitler's obsession with holding ground is making it worse. The generals know it, the soldiers know it, even the civilians know it. But Hitler doesn't care. He orders Operation Citadel, a massive offensive, one last push, one last chance. The generals protest. They say it's too late. They say the Soviets are ready, but Hitler insists. He says it will break Stalin. It doesn't. It fails. And the Red Army begins its march west. Stalin's refusal to surrender becomes a weapon, a psychological weapon. German morale collapses. Soldiers start deserting. Officers start questioning. And Hitler starts isolating. He stops listening. He stops trusting. He starts blaming. But the truth is simple. Stalin won't stop. And Germany can't keep going. General Jodl writes a private memo. He says the war is lost. He says the only hope is negotiation. But he doesn't send it, because Hitler would execute him. Instead, he burns it and prepares for the next meeting, where he'll pretend everything is fine, where he'll nod and agree, where he'll lie. But the lies are cracking. Reports from the front are worse every day. Soviet artillery is leveling cities. Soviet infantry is advancing faster than expected. And Stalin is sending a message with every bullet. Surrender is not an option. Hitler's generals know it, and they're terrified. The generals begin to fracture, not just in strategy, but in loyalty. Some still believe in Hitler's vision. Others believe in survival. But all of them know one thing. Stalin's refusal to surrender has changed the war. It's no longer about territory. It's about endurance. And Germany is running out of time. In Moscow, Stalin gives a speech. It's broadcast across the Soviet Union. He says, "We will bury them." The words echo through Berlin, not just as propaganda, but as prophecy. Because Soviet forces are now inside Ukraine, inside Belarus, inside Poland, and they're not stopping. Hitler's generals meet again. General Schörner says the Eastern Front is collapsing faster than expected. He says Soviet logistics are improving. He says their supply lines are holding. Hitler interrupts. He says Germany will counterattack. But the generals know. Counterattacks don't work when the enemy refuses to break. And Stalin isn't breaking. Reports from the front describe Soviet soldiers fighting without food, without sleep, without fear. One general says they fight like they're already dead. Another says they fight like they've already won. But the most chilling report comes from a German officer captured near Leningrad. He says the Soviets don't take prisoners anymore. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, they just advance. And every step forward is soaked in blood. Hitler reads the report. He doesn't react, but his generals do. They start planning for the worst. Not victory, not peace, but collapse. Because Stalin's refusal to surrender isn't just a tactic. It's a message that Germany will pay for every inch of land. A message that the Eastern Front will become a graveyard. And it's working. Morale in Berlin is crumbling. Civilians are evacuating. Factories are slowing. And the generals are running out of options. But Hitler still believes, or pretends to. He orders new offensives, new weapons, new speeches. But none of it matters, because Stalin isn't listening. He's advancing, and every advance brings the Red Army closer to Berlin. General Heinrici says it plainly. We can't stop them. Hitler responds with silence. Then he says, then we die in Berlin. But dying in Berlin isn't strategy, it's desperation, and the generals know it. They start sending secret messages to neutral countries. They start preparing escape plans. They start questioning everything. Because Stalin's refusal to surrender has exposed the truth. Germany's war machine is broken. And Hitler's pride is the final nail. He won't retreat. He won't negotiate. He won't adapt. And Stalin knows it. That's why he keeps pushing. That's why he keeps sacrificing. That's why he keeps winning. Because Hitler's rigidity is his weakness, and Stalin is exploiting it perfectly. The generals meet one last time. The Eastern Front is gone. The Red Army is inside Germany. Cities are burning. Civilians are fleeing. And Stalin still refuses to surrender. Because he doesn't need to. Because he's winning. And Hitler's generals finally understand this war won't end with peace. The Red Army enters East Prussia. German civilians flee in panic. Towns are abandoned. Roads are clogged with carts, cars, and corpses. Reports say Soviet soldiers are exacting revenge, burning homes, executing prisoners, leaving nothing untouched. Hitler's generals read these reports in silence, because they know Stalin's refusal to surrender has become something else, a crusade. General Bush says the Eastern Front is no longer a battlefield, it's a reckoning. He says Stalin is punishing Germany for every village burned, every civilian killed, every atrocity committed. And the punishment is total. Hitler doesn't respond. He's staring at a map of Berlin. The red pins are closing in. In the bunker, the atmosphere shifts. The generals speak less. The lights dim. The air feels heavier. Because they know what's coming. Not just defeat, not just occupation, but destruction. Stalin won't stop until Berlin is rubble, until Hitler is dead, until Germany is broken beyond repair. General Krebs tries to negotiate. He sends a message to Soviet command. He asks for terms. He asks for mercy. Stalin doesn't reply. Instead, artillery shells land closer to Berlin. The message is clear. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be no surrender, except unconditional. Hitler refuses to leave the bunker. He says he'll die in Berlin. He says the generals should do the same. Some agree. Others plan to escape. But none of them believe in victory anymore. Because Stalin's refusal to surrender has become a mirror, a reflection of Hitler's own obsession. But Stalin's obsession is winning. The final reports arrive. Soviet tanks are inside the city. German defenses are collapsing. Civilians are hiding in basements. Fires rage across districts. And still,
Stalin pushes. Because surrender isn't in his vocabulary. Because compromise isn't in his doctrine. Because victory is the only acceptable outcome. Hitler's generals gather one last time. The war is over, but the consequences are just beginning. Stalin's refusal to surrender didn't just win the war. It reshaped the world. It divided Europe. It birthed a new era. And it taught every general in that room a brutal lesson. Sometimes the enemy's greatest weapon is their will. The bunker falls silent. Outside, Soviet soldiers raise their flag. Inside, Hitler is gone. The generals are prisoners. And the war that began with ambition ends with ashes. Because Stalin didn't surrender. And that refusal changed history forever. The war ends, but the scars remain. Stalin's refusal to surrender didn't just win battles. It rewrote the rules of warfare. His generals called it iron will. His enemies called it madness. But history calls it victory. Because when faced with annihilation, Stalin chose defiance. And that defiance changed everything. In post-war Germany, Hitler's surviving generals reflect. Some write memoirs, some stand trial, some disappear, but all of them remember one thing. The moment they realized Stalin wouldn't surrender. That moment shattered their confidence. That moment ended their illusions. That moment marked the beginning of the end. The Eastern Front becomes legend, a place where millions died, where cities vanished, where surrender was never an option. And Stalin's refusal becomes myth, a symbol of endurance, a warning to future enemies, a lesson written in blood and fire. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a bomb or a bullet, it's belief. Belief that surrender is worse than death. Belief that sacrifice is strength. Belief that victory is inevitable. Stalin held that belief, and he passed it to his soldiers, and they passed it to history. And now, decades later, we still study it, still fear it, still wonder, what if he had surrendered? But he didn't, and that choice shaped the world. The Cold War, the Iron Curtain, the nuclear arms race. All of it born from one decision, to never give up. Hitler's generals couldn't understand it, couldn't match it, couldn't stop it. And that's why they lost. One refusal, one man, one war. Everything changed.